Yeah, wheels. That's the word I saw. I didn't remember it last night. Guess it didn't seem important then. Must be a lot of cars that have those plates on them all over town.
Yes, we know.
Don't seem like it's going to help much. A lot of cars with those plates on them, lots of them.
Yes, ma'am.
Even if you do find the kid with one of them, how are you going to know if he's the right one?
Well, it's not going to be too hard.
Huh?
His car will tell us. According to the report, an automobile driven by one male occupant had struck a woman while she crossed the intersection of Olympic Boulevard and Connecticut Street the night before. When the ambulance arrived at the scene, the victim, who was identified as Mrs. Helen Chapman, was unconscious and was removed to Georgia Street Receiving Hospital for emergency treatment. Members of the crime lab had arrived at the scene and gathered what physical evidence they could find. All citizens in the vicinity were interrogated and their statements were taken. Photographs of the coroner were made and held for evidence. Because of the hit-and-run aspect of the case, Frank and I had been assigned to investigate it. At 1:14 p.m., we drove over to Georgia Street Receiving Hospital to talk to the attending physician, Dr. Sebastian. He said the patient's condition was so critical that she couldn't be moved to her own hospital. He told us that the victim hadn't recovered consciousness to the point where she could be questioned. He went on to tell us that she'd been administered serum albumin to counteract shock. He listed her injuries for us. Compound fractures of the femur, rib fractures and associated internal injuries, including a punctured lung and brain concussion. It was not expected that she'd live. Frank and I left the doctor and walked down the hall. In the waiting room, we met a tall, thin man who looked as if he hadn't slept in several days. On the floor in front of him was a small pile of half-smoked cigarettes. He identified himself as the victim's husband, Carl Chapman.
I don't know. I came home from work. You told me about it. I didn't even know.
Didn't they try to call you at work?
No, I guess they called the house. There wasn't anybody home. I just walked up to the door and a note telling me to call her. Didn't even know about Helen.
I see. You like a cigarette, Chapman?
Thanks. You talked to the doctor?
Yes, sir. We just did.
Is there anything new? She can be all right?
Well, I don't know yet. You can ask the doctor yourself.
Why don't anybody tell me anything? All the time I ask how my wife is, they tell me to ask the doctor. Why won't they tell me?
I don't know, sir.
Can't even find out if she needs anything. He won't let me see her. And anybody who'll tell me what's really happening in there, it's been over 10 hours. Nobody will tell me what's going on.
Best thing, try to sit down and take it easy, Mr. Chapman.
Oh, that's great to say. Just sit down. Easy to say. It's not your wife who's in there. It isn't someone you love. Why are you here anyway? Why aren't you out trying to get the rotten little punk that did it? Why don't you look for him?
We'll get to him, sir.
When? After Helen's dead? Is that going to be when you start looking?
We're looking for him now. We came over in the hopes that we could talk to your wife. We thought she might be able to give us some information.
What in God's name do you want from her? The name and address of the kid who ran it down? Does she have to get out of bed and go find him for you? It's your job, yours. All this talk about the police department being so good, but what are you doing? You're standing around here with your toe in the dirt waiting for my wife to come to, enough to point the kid out.
All right, sir. Now, take it easy.
Take it easy, nothing. You listen to me, both of you. You listen. If she dies, if that kid killed her, I'll find him. I don't know how, but I will. I'm going to do the same thing to him with my hands that he did with his car. I'll find him, I swear I'll find him, and I'm going to kill him. With my hands, I'm going to kill him.
Mr. Chapman?
Yeah.
Can I see you for a moment?
Yeah. Would you excuse us for a minute, Sergeant?
Sure, Doctor. We'll wait out in the hall. It's a rough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's going on in there? I don't know. Better call the skipper. Tell him about that plate on the car. Get a broadcast out on it. Check the phone book for the address of the National Hot Rod Association. Better talk with them, huh? They might have something for us on the club.
Right. You better start, Carl. You better find it fast because I'm looking.
You ought to go home and get some sleep, Mr. Chapman. You're all worn out.
I'm not going to get any sleep until I catch that kid. Until I catch that kid.
How old's the girl?
She's dead. Both of them are.
Both of them?
Yeah. She's going to have a baby in a couple of months.
3:15 p.m. Frank and I drove out to the offices of the National Hot Rod Association on Hollywood Boulevard. We met with Bud Coons and Wally Parks. They checked their records for clubs with the last name Wheels. There were 3 in their files. 2 were in the eastern part of the United States, and 1 was listed as having headquarters in Alhambra, California. We obtained the name and address of the president of the club, and we drove out to see him. We found him in the garage behind the house working on a 1941 Ford. We introduced ourselves, and he asked us to sit down.
What do you want to see me about?
We understand that you're the president of the Square Wheels, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Why?
How many members do you have in the club?
18. 18 actives. There's a couple of guys in the service. What's this all about, anyway? How come the questions?
All your members have the metal plates with the club name on their car?
Yeah, get them when they pay the initiation fee. Why?
Anybody else have them?
Not legally.
What do you mean?
Well, a couple of them out have been stolen from members.
Any of the fellas in the club drive a black pre-war Ford?
Yeah, I guess we got about 5 of them. I got one myself, as a matter of fact. Listen, why can't you tell me what this is all about? Figure if I knew what you wanted, I could help you out.
Well, a woman was run down by a hot rod last night. One of the witnesses saw a plate on the car that might have been from your club.
No kidding.
That's the way we get it.
What did it look like?
Well, they say it had twin pipes, pretty well beat up, white sidewall tires.
It's not one of ours, then.
You sound pretty sure. What about the plate?
I told you, we've had a couple of them stolen. Must have been one of them.
Well, how come you're so sure it wasn't one of your members?
Oh, I know the car's in the club. There isn't a yo-yo in the bunch.
What's a yo-yo?
Well, yeah, you know, a shot rod, junkie.
Oh, I see.
I don't know. It seems like every time there's any trouble with a car over 5 years old, it's a hot rod. Sure not fair.
That's so.
Yeah. Hey, come here, I'll show you. Now, take a look at that. I've been working on it for 3 years. Got over $1,200 in it. Take a look at it.
It's a lot of motor.
Yeah, it's a good car, but what's it prove?
The car that ran that woman down wasn't a hot rod.
How do you figure that?
You said it was a wreck, didn't you?
That's right.
We haven't got a wreck that's allowed on the streets in this club. I don't know a legal club that has a yo-yo in it. We got a safety check every month. Any car that isn't safe has to be fixed or the guy's out. A lot of clubs operate that way.
Yeah, we know.
Now, kids build rods for 2 reasons. Because they want the cars to run better, be more efficient, or else they want something a little different than you can buy in a showroom.
You know, well, all this sounds good, but a woman was killed last night by a kid driving a hopped-up car of some kind.
Maybe it had twin pipes and a loud muffler, but I'll give you odds from here to Bonneville that it wasn't a hot rod. I know how you guys feel. We're always getting it. Every kid behind the wheel in a second-hand car is a potential killer. The way the papers pictures, we just roam around looking for somebody to run over. That's not true. You check the records. I think you'll find that the ratio between tickets given out to members of hot rod clubs, members of the NHRA, and any other group of drivers will make the hot rodders look pretty good. There hasn't been a ticket in our club in the last year and a half. The one before that was for overtime parking. Oh, I'm sorry, fellas. That car last night wasn't one of our guys, and you can bet he wasn't a hot rodder either.
You got any way of knowing who could have gotten the plaque?
Well, not right off, but we'll find him.
How?
There's only so many streets in Los Angeles. We'll find him. Guys like that make things rough on the clean drivers in this town. We'll find him for you.
Well, we appreciate any help you can give us on this, but it's police business. If you find him, give us a call right away.
Don't worry, we will. How do I get in touch with you?
We'll leave you one of our cards. Anytime. You call us.
All right? I'll get on the phone and get the fellas rounded up.
If you turn anything, call us right away. Don't try to take care of it yourselves.
Only one thing we're interested in.
You know what's that?
Proving to you it wasn't one of us. That's what's important. Showing you we're on your side.
Well, that shouldn't be too hard.
Huh?
There's a lot of room. We got the names and addresses of the members of the Square Wheel Club, and we talked to them. We checked their cars, and each of them volunteered to assist us in attempting to locate the hit-and-run vehicle. 6:40 p.m. Frank and I got back to the office. During the afternoon, the broadcast on the car had gone over the state wire, and every police officer in the state of California was looking for the hit-and-run car. When we checked with communications, there had been no replies to our broadcast. 7:15 p.m. We put in a call to Georgia Street Receiving Hospital, and we talked again to Dr. Sebastian. He told us that the victim's husband, Carl Chapman, had been placed under the care of his family doctor and had been given sedatives to make him sleep. While I checked with Lieutenant Wolfram on the developments, Frank went over to the crime lab and talked with Lieutenant Lee Jones. 8:47 p.m. We met back in the squad room.
Any word yet?
No. Got a call from Al Gibbs.
Hot Rod Club?
Yeah. He says all the clubs in the area are looking for the car. They divided the city up in sections. Members are checking all the streets.
No luck, though, huh?
No, nothing. Well, they turned a couple of cars, but they don't check out. How'd you do?
Pretty good. Got the report here.
Had a couple sandwiches sent in. Got you Swiss on rye. Good. In the bag there.
Where's coffee?
Right there, carton.
Oh. The lab sure did a good job on this stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the scene. Victim was found 10 feet 4 inches from the northeast corner, 4 feet 8 inches from the north pedestrian crosswalk.
And put it about here, wouldn't it?
Yeah, they found particles of broken glass. Checked on them at the lighthouse. Lenses from 1944. Here's a picture of them.
Yeah.
In the gutter of the southwest corner, they found this.
There's a bumper guard.
Yeah, I looked at it. It's new.
Any brand name?
Yeah, but it's not going to help much. Distributed all over the country.
Well, how about skid marks? Any sign of them?
No, not that they could find. Either the kid didn't have time to use them or else he didn't want to. He came up with this, though.
Yeah, what's that?
Well, some marks from a tire. Lee says he thinks they were made when the kid dug out to get away, spun the back wheels.
Sure indicate that he didn't mean to stop at any time, huh? Well, that's the way Lee's got it figured. Well, there isn't much to go on, is it? I've come easier. Well, let's go out and check the neighborhood again. We might still be able to turn up a decent description. We start checking the garages in the morning. Try to turn a car with a broken headlight and a missing bumper guard.
Okay, better call communications, get out a supplemental on the tires.
Yeah, I'll take care of it. I got it. Getting on felony Friday. Yeah, that's right. Anybody there? No. No, keep it under surveillance. We'll be right out. Yeah, don't burn it. Right, bye.
What do you got?
Well, it's beginning to go our way, maybe.
Huh?
They found the car.
You are listening to Dragnet, the authentic story of your police force in action. Chesterfield's for me. You hear it everywhere. Tonight, we hear from America's #1 band leader, Ray Anthony, who, with his attractive wife, Dee, plays college dates from coast to coast.
In cigarettes, the young crowd really goes for Chesterfields. I've noticed that wherever we've played. And I guess it's one of the reasons Chesterfield is America's most popular two-way cigarette. Of course, Dee and I are Chesterfield smokers, too. We know they're best for us.
Chesterfield's for me.
These guys.
You hear it everywhere. The Chesterfield you smoke today is the best cigarette ever made. For the taste you want, the mildness you want, join the thousands now changing to Chesterfield.
During a routine patrol of the streets in East Los Angeles, a radio unit had come across a car parked at the curb on Vancouver Avenue. They'd stopped to investigate and found that it matched the description that we'd sent out. On the phone, I'd instructed the officer not to search the car, but merely to keep it under surveillance and check and hold anyone who approached it. Frank and I notified the crime lab of the find, and then we left the office and drove out to the location. We talked to the officers in the police car, and they told us that they hadn't seen anyone near the vehicle. We checked the registration and found that the registered owner was a Jack Moore. The white slip gave us an address in Hollywood. While the crime lab went over the car, we drove out to Moore's address to talk to him. He lived in a large house built in the mid-20s as a private residence. It had been converted into a boarding house. Frank covered the rear entrance. I rang the front doorbell.
You just said it was a boarding house.
Yeah? What do you want waking me up this time of night?
Police officer, you have a tenant here named Jack Moore?
What about it?
We'd like to talk to him.
Too late, Mac. He ain't here.
Where is he?
I don't know. He moved out this afternoon. He didn't say where he was going.
A thorough search was made of the suspect's room. The manager told us that Moore had come home that morning, packed his belongings, and left the house. We called the crime lab, and Lieutenant Lee Jones told us that they'd established that Moore's car was the one that had run down the Chapman girl. We talked to the other people in the rooming house. None of them could tell us where Moore might have gone. We put in a call to auto records, but the car was not listed as being stolen. Frank called his name into R&I, but we found that he had no felony record. From the occupants of the rooming house, we found that the suspect had no relatives in this state and no close friends that they could recall. Leighton Prince came out and went over the room, and in going over it, we found a wastebasket Moore had used to dispose of articles that he didn't want. In the basket, we found several match folders from a bar out on West 7th Street. We put in a call to the bar, but we found that it was closed. From the manager of the rooming house, we got a good description of the suspect, along with the information that he received no mail and that he was apparently unemployed.
The husband
A
smokes.
stakeout was set up on the house, and at 3:36 a.m., Frank and I checked out of the office and went home for the night. The next day, Wednesday, April 8th, we contacted DMV and asked that they give us all information on the car. 9:15 a.m., we drove over to the bar on West 7th Street.
Not open yet. Don't open till 10.
Police officers, like some information.
License is back there on the wall in plain sight. There's nothing going on here.
You have a customer in here named Jack Moore?
We just open the doors. We got no say about who comes in. As long as they don't cause trouble, we don't either.
This guy's about 20 or 21, 5'8", 5'10", 165 pounds, blonde. Name's Moore, Jack Moore.
What's he done?
You want to talk to him?
About what?
Police business. Have you seen him?
Nothing that's going to get the bar in trouble?
Well, that's a simple question, mister. Have you seen him?
Maybe, yeah. You tell me what it's all about, and I might be able to help you out.
You're running out of time. Have you seen Jack Moore?
Yeah.
When?
Last night?
Here?
Yeah, he was in, got liquored up. I tossed him out when we closed.
Where's he now?
You better ask him.
I'm going to tell you once more. If you know where he is, you're going to save yourself a lot of time by cooperating with us.
I run a clean place here. I don't want any trouble with the cops. My license is on the wall. I got no choice of the customers who come in here. I don't want to get mixed up in any.
We're not calling it that way.
That's the way it is. This is a clean place.
That's not what the book says. You've been tapped a couple of times for serving minors. You run B-girls. You haven't served straight liquor in here for a couple of years. Now, we have to get the information from you downtown. That's the way it's going to be. Get your coat.
Oh, now look, fellas, I was just trying to take care of myself.
You did. Get your coat.
Isn't there some way we can work this thing out? I don't want any trouble.
Where's Jack Moore?
I try to run a clean place. A couple of times
We've been over all that before. Now, where is he?
I got him up at my place.
You there now?
I guess so. He got pretty loaded last night. Told me he didn't have any place to pad down. I took him home.
What's the address?
1862 and a half Woodworth Court, room 14.
All right, let's go.
Yeah. And don't try to call him.
I got no phone in the room. He's done anything, I had no part in it. Just trying to help a friend out, that's all. Just help a friend out.
Yeah, sure.
You tell him that. Oh, he got me in trouble, all because I tried to help him out. You just tell him.
Yeah, we will.
And tell him not to come around here anymore. Tell him to keep out. Tell him that, will you, for me? Tell him not to come back.
Don't you worry about it.
Hmm?
He won't be back. We called the office, and another team of detectives came out to the bar to keep the bartender under surveillance in the event that he might try to contact the suspect. It took 5.5 minutes to drive to the Woodward Street address. It was a large building located at the end of a blind street. Room 14 was on the 3rd floor in the front of the building. Frank and I approached the room and we listened. There was no sound from inside. You want to try the door? Yeah. Come on. Yeah. There he is on the bed. Yeah. Looks like the right guy. Well, let's wake him up. Come on. Come on, boy. Wake up. Come on.
Let me alone, Charlie.
Come on. Get up, boy. Get up.
Boy, let me alone. I told you, Charlie, let me... Who are you guys? What are you doing
Police
here?
officers, you're under arrest.
Now, wait a minute, Art. Hang on.
Come on, stand still.
All right. All right, I quit.
You want to shake him, Frank?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's clean.
Where you taking me? I ain't done nothing. You got no reason to push me around like
All right,
this.
let's go.
Where? Where you gonna take me?
Downtown.
For what?
Manslaughter.
I didn't do it. I didn't. You got the wrong guy. You got the wrong one. I didn't do
All
it.
right, come on, let's move.
But you got the wrong one. I didn't do it. I didn't know what you wanted. That's why I run. I didn't know what you
Well, you
wanted.
do now, so let's go. The suspect was taken to the squad room where he was questioned. He refused to admit any part in the crime. He was confronted with the physical evidence and with the ownership of the hit-run vehicle. The witness to the crime came to the office and said that Jack Moore was the man that she'd seen at the wheel of the car when Helen Chapman had been run down. Throughout the interrogation, the suspect refused to say anything. At 1:47 p.m., the door to the squad room opened and Carl Chapman came in.
Where is he? I know he's here. I want to see him.
All right, take it easy,
I
Chapman.
heard you called him. I want to see him. I want to tell him. Is that the kid? Are you the one? You the one who killed Helen? Well, answer me.
All right, take it easy, Chapman.
Is he the one?
The evidence points that way, yeah.
Please. I want you to do something for me.
What's that?
Go away. Out of here, please.
We can't do that, Chapman. He's in custody.
Please leave me alone with him.
Come on, Chapman. You better wait outside.
Now, just a minute. Listen to me, kid. When they put you in that cell, you get down on your knees and thank God that they found you before I did. You understand? You thank him, and every day you live, you thank him. You do that because I would have killed you.
Take it easy, Chapman.
My wife's dead because of him. You hear that? You killed her. They got lost to save people like you, but none for her. None for her and the baby. They didn't have any laws. None for them.
All right, Chapman. Come on, take it easy. Frank, come on, yeah.
Pretty upset, ain't he?
I want you to remember something, kid. In the years I've been in this department, I've seen some bad ones, real bad. Teenage kids that didn't know any better, scraped up off the pavement, sent home to their parents. Drunks who were too loaded to know what went on. There's been a lot of them go through here, but you finished way ahead of the field, boy.
You talk good. I bet you're on a lecture team around here.
I'm getting fed up with you kids roaming the streets in death traps. Now, I don't care about you. You want to wrap yourself around a post, you go ahead. We'll try and stop you, but don't you take somebody else with you. Every year, the number gets bigger, more people killed. It isn't the honest drivers that do it. It's people like you who don't care for anybody else. Now, we've tried about everything in the books to make you understand. Doesn't look like any of them did any good, does it?
I'm a bad one, ain't I?
You killed a human being, boy. A woman who didn't even know you. She never saw you until it was too late. You threw a 1.5 ton of metal at a 120-pound woman, and then you ran away and left her in the gutter to die. You wrecked the family. You tore it right down the middle and rolled over it. You ruined the lives of all the people around that woman. You gave a group of decent kids a bad time because you stole their name. Now, you get on your feet, young fella. And you keep that smart mouth of yours closed. Do you understand?
Can I ask you something?
What's that?
Hit and run. How much will I get?
I don't know, but it won't be enough.
story you've just heard is true. The names were changed to protect the innocent. On October 14th, trial was held in Department 97, Superior Court of the State of California, in and for the County of Los Angeles. In a moment, the results of that trial.
Now, here is our star, Jack Webb. Thank you, George Fenneman. Thousands of smokers all across the country are now changing to Chesterfield. We'd like you to give them a try, too. I know you'll like them because the Chesterfield you smoke today is the best cigarette ever made. For the taste you want and the mildness you want, smoke America's most popular two-way cigarette. Regular or king size, Chesterfield.
Jack Carlisle Moore was tried and found guilty of manslaughter, 1 count, and received sentence as prescribed by law.
Wow.
Manslaughter is punishable by imprisonment in the state penitentiary for a period not to exceed 10 years. You have just heard Dragnet, a series of authentic cases from official files. Technical advice comes from the Office of Chief of Police W.H. Parker, Los Angeles Police Department. Technical advisors, Captain Jack Donahoe, Sergeant Marty Wynn, Sergeant Vance Brasher. Heard tonight were Ben Alexander, Joyce McCluskey, Harry Bartell, Dick Perrin. Script by John Robinson. Music by Walter Schumann. Hal Gibney speaking.
Watch an entirely different Dragnet case history each week on your local NBC television station. Please check your newspapers for the day and time. Chesterfield has brought you Dragnet, transcribed from Los Angeles.
Filter tip smokers, this is it. L&M Filters. The only filter tip cigarette with plenty of good taste. The right length for effective filtration. And just the right filter. Only the L&M filter contains the miracle product, alpha cellulose. You get much more flavor, much less nicotine. This is it. As Bennett Cerf puts it, is just what the doctor ordered. Buy L&M filters, America's highest quality and best filter tip cigarette.
And this is what 40 years of harassment from South African rape gangs looks like.
Here, Rocky Fortune and the...
Stay safe and stay tuned to Chin Radio AM 1540.
Suspense. The Armed Forces Radio
Suspense. This is the Man in Black, here again to introduce Columbia's program, Suspense. In our starring Hollywood cast tonight are Mr. John Sutton, who appears as a young English doctor, Jim Norwood, who knew a great deal more than he admitted concerning the strange events which we are about to relate. And Mr. George Zucco, who plays the village curate, the Reverend Arthur Morley. Our story, and it bears none but a coincidental resemblance to H.G. Wells' famous short novel, The Invisible Man, is by John Dixon Carr, and is called The Man Without a Body, tonight's tale of suspense. If you have been with us on these Tuesday nights, you will know that suspense is compounded of mystery and suspicion and dangerous adventure. In this series of tales calculated to intrigue you. And so it is with The Man Without a Body and the performances of John Sutton and George Zucco. We again hope to keep you in suspense. A lonely beach of low white sand hills edged by the surf of the North Sea. And Back from the beach, drowsing as it has drowsed for 10 centuries, lies the village of Aldbridge in Suffolk. There's the seawall, now defaced by air raid shells, and there are the rolling grain fields, the thatched white cottages, the spire of St. Luke's Church above the oak trees, ancient and bell-haunted, lost among hedgerows. This village could never cause consternation in London newspaper offices. And yet, on that warm night nearly 4 years ago,
this time it's really happened. A man without a body, completely invisible.
Copy, boy. Copy, boy. Look at this dispatch. Reign of terror in Suffolk Village. Has another of H.G. Wells' romances come true?
An invisible man? I can't believe it.
What's the matter with that village? They all gone settled? Mr. George Wellman, builder, states that as he was returning home along the main road from Bury St. Edmunds,
He distinctly saw a man's hat without any head under it, moving towards him about 6 feet above the ground.
George must have been full of beer. We can't use this story. Copy, boy. Even more surprising evidence was given by the Reverend Arthur Morley, vicar of St. Luke's Church. Oh, the parson? You don't think he was full of beer? One question above all agitates the village. Who is Professor Ansmith? Who is this elderly American, said to be an inventor, who has settled at Aldbridge and leased a part of the house belonging to the local doctor? Out of some terrifying workshop, to strike like a maniac, where least expected, has there at last emerged
A real invisible man?
the Church of St. Luke, Aldbridge, on that same Sunday evening. Evening service is over now, though an echo of bells still lingers. In the vestry at the rear of the church, where white surplices hang like ghosts, the Reverend Arthur Morley sits with his daughter Janice. It is a stone room of painted windows, now many-colored in the sunset. And here as the drowsy summer light turns to dusk.
Janice, I don't believe it.
I know, Father.
I saw it with my own eyes, yet I don't believe it. You don't think we were dreaming, do you?
No, Father. We weren't dreaming.
If this goes on, the whole village will be in a frenzy. But what can I do?
We could go to Professor Ansmith and ask him straight out.
Ask him whether he's responsible for these...
Yes.
I wonder, Janice. The man isn't hurting anybody, you know. You couldn't ask for a quieter person or a better neighbor. And yet... What's that?
Father, you are upset. It's only Mr. Emmett coming down from the belfry.
Emmett? Oh, yes, of course. Is that you, Mr. Emmett?
It's me, all right, sir. And very much in the flesh. Did you think I was the invisible man?
Mr. Emmett, I forbid you to mention that subject.
Very good, sir. But there's others, begging your pardon, that do mention it.
Oh, yes, forgive me. I spoke too sharply.
That's all right, sir. No harm done, no bones broken. Mind you, not that I hold with this talk about invisible men. Ain't natural, I say. It ain't hardly Christian. I'm a greengrocer by trade, and I believe in what I can weigh and feel a day.
What's the matter, Mr. Emmett? Is anything wrong?
Excuse me, sir. And you too, miss. Do you see anybody in this room except us?
No, of course not. Why?
Because I could have sworn something brushed past me just now.
You're imagining things, Mr. Emmett.
Yes, sir, I dare say.
There's nobody hidden in the belfry tower, I hope.
No, sir. I had a look-see. And what's more, there's not going to be anybody up there once I've locked the door. Now, let that blighter try and get in.
Oh, please, Mr. Emmett. And you too, Father. You're talking about this invisible man as though he actually existed.
There's something funny going on, miss. You can't deny that.
No, none of us can deny it.
And what's more, sir, it's getting pretty dark in here. Hadn't you and Miss Janice better get along to the vicarage while I lock up?
No, we can't go just yet, Mr. Emmett. We're expecting Dr. Norwood.
Dr. Jim Norwood, sir? What does he say about all this?
Oh, you might ask him yourself, Mr. Emmett. I think that's probably him now. Come in. The vestry door's not locked.
Hello, Padre. Hello, Janice. I'm sorry I'm late.
Hello, Jim. You seem a good deal out of breath.
I am out of breath, Janice, because there's blue blazes to pay down in the village.
Not more trouble.
Yes, I'm afraid so. They're holding a mass meeting at the Coach and Horses, and they're ready to murder Professor Ansmith. If this invisible man cuts any more capers, we may see a real old-fashioned lynching in an English village.
Now, look here, my boy. This has got to stop.
I know that, Padre, but how are we going to stop it?
Sit down there, Jim, across the table from me.
Yes, sir.
First of all, what do you know about this Professor Smith?
Nothing, sir. Nothing at all.
But you rent part of your house to him.
Oh, my dear Padre, that house is twice as big as I can possibly manage. I was only too glad to get a tenant.
He gave you references, I imagine?
Yes, but I didn't bother to check them. He's a quiet old boy. Pays his rent on the dot. Never does anything except read and go for long walks.
Are you quite sure of that, Jim?
Her village has war nerves, that's all. With the camouflage aerodrome in the neighborhood, they're apt to imagine anything.
True, perhaps, but...
That talk about dynamos humming in the old boy's room and blue lights flashing is rubbish out of a sensational film. They imagine the whole thing. Finally, this crazy story about an invisible man playing the gramophone. Why,
It's not a crazy story, Jim. Janice and I saw it happen.
You what?
Last night, about 9:30, Janice and I were out for a walk in the lane that runs past your house. On the way, we met Willie Kendrick, and he joined us.
Well, sir?
Listen, Jim. On that side of the house, there's a little square room with 2 windows and no furniture except a round table and a couple of chairs. Do you know the one we mean?
Yes, of course. Professor Smith uses it. What about the room?
It wasn't quite blackout time. The windows were up, the curtains weren't drawn, and the room was brightly lighted. On the table stood an old-fashioned gramophone with a horn and a crank handle. Beside it lay a pair of white cotton gloves, like gardener's gloves. The gramophone was playing away for dear life, but there was nobody in the room. Janice thought that was a bit odd, a gramophone going full tilt with nobody there, and called my attention to it. Just then, the gramophone started to run down. We could hear the record slow and go off key. As it did so...
Well, sir, go on.
As it did so, those white gloves got up off the table.
Got up off the table?
Got up off the table, took hold of the gramophone, and wound it up again.
Mr. Emmett, what on earth are you doing?
I dropped some candlesticks.
So I see. Please pick them up again.
Yes,
Padre, are you serious?
perfectly serious.
A pair of gloves without any hands inside them?
Yes.
But what did they do exactly?
The left-hand glove steadied the gramophone. The right-hand glove wound it up. Then they both hung in the air, beating time to the music. It should have been funny. I can only assure you it was not funny.
Oh, what happened then?
Oh, Jim, it was horrible. Willie Kendrick let out a yell and ran down the lane between the apple trees as though the devil were after him.
I can't say I blame him.
Father and I just stood there and...
Stared is the word, my dear.
Yes, stared. I can't forget any of it. The three-legged table and the whirling record and the blue flowers on the wallpaper. But there was nobody there. You could see past the table and under the table and all over the room. And there was nobody there.
Except the man without any body.
Confound the man without any body.
Father, suppose it is true.
As a clergyman, my dear, I prefer to remain agnostic. This thing's a trick.
Yes, but how's it done and why?
That's the whole point, Jim. What worries me is the effect on our people here. We call ourselves intelligent, and yet, look at us. Even Mr. Emmett there.
Hey, what's that about me, sir?
A few minutes ago, you thought something brushed past you when you were coming down the stairs from the bell tower. Now, didn't you?
Well, yes, sir.
You see what I mean, Jim?
But I didn't really think so, sir. Not really. It was imagination, just like the doctor said. Because I searched that tower. I locked the door afterwards.
Exactly. But the mere force of suggestion, nothing more, might lead you to believe.
That's not suggestion, Father.
Sir. Oh, step by below. There's nobody in that belfry.
Bells can't ring by themselves, old man. There's somebody pulling the rope up there, and we're going to find out who it is.
Now, one moment, all of you.
What's wrong, Padre? You're as white as a ghost.
This blasphemous mockery, it seems, extends even to the church. Very well. You will stay with Janice, my boy. Emmett and I will collar this invisible man.
Why can't I go too?
I don't believe in this, but I should prefer to have someone with Janice. You're not afraid, Mr. Emmett?
If it's alive, sir, I'm not afraid of it. And if it's dead, well, you're not afraid of it. The tower door's open, sir. I'm ready.
Don't do it, Father. Don't go.
You can't help them, Janice. Sit down here. Take it easy.
Jim Lord, what's wrong with you?
Wrong with me?
You've got an odd look, too. And the light's fading. And the surfaces look like ghosts. And in another minute, that bell would drive me mad. Suppose he has got him.
Who?
The invisible man.
Oh, don't talk rot.
As there are sounds that the ear cannot hear, so there are colors that the eye cannot see. I read that somewhere. He hasn't hurt anybody yet. But suppose he turns nasty and does hurt somebody.
He can't hurt anybody.
How do you know?
Janice, listen to me. Take my hand.
Oh, but Jim...
I want to tell you a few things you won't understand. I don't ask you to understand. I just ask you to remember.
Well, what is it?
The first is a question. If you were a government official and wanted to find an expert on camouflage, where would you go?
An expert on camouflage?
Yes. And the second point is this. I studied medicine in Germany.
I know, Dad, but that's
One night on a bet, I hid backstage at the Winter Garden Theater in Berlin. I saw the whole show from backstage, and I learned a great deal.
Jim Norwood, what on earth are you talking
George
about?
Wellman and I have talked the whole thing over. In a way, Janice, there is an invisible man. I can tell you who he is and how he works. But there's no danger, do you understand? There's no danger at all.
Jim, what was that?
I don't know.
You do know. I can see it in your face. You do know.
I think somebody's fallen
Fallen?
from the top of the belfry.
Fire!
Stay here, Janice. You can't do any good.
Let go of my arm. I'm going out there.
Oh, you're not. I didn't think what the danger might be. Besides, there's somebody coming down the stairs now. Stay just where you are and don't move until...
Oh, Father. Father, are you all right?
Steady, sir. Take it easy now.
I'm perfectly all right, yes. But you'd better go into the churchyard and see to Emmett.
He fell?
No, Janice, he did not fall. He was thrown.
Oh.
Thrown? By whom?
There's no time to argue now. You're a doctor. Go out and see to him.
Well, is he in?
I don't know. Go.
Yes, sir.
For I will work a deed in your days which ye will not believe, though it be told you. Janice, this is incredible.
Why?
You heard the bell ring. I saw it ring.
Without anybody there?
I was as close to that bell as I am to you now. No hand held the rope. There were no strings or wires or any tricks to make it move. Yet it clanged back and forth alone in the tower. And I thought I heard someone laugh.
Laugh?
Oh, don't take that too seriously. We were both overwrought, and the noise of the bell was deafening.
What about Mr. Emmett?
Emmett yelled some words I couldn't hear and lunged for the bell. Then something caught him. Something caught him and gave him a sledgehammer blow in the back. That bell was nothing but open arches. You heard him scream. I saw his face just before he went over.
Lock the door to the tower, Father. Lock it.
I can't lock it. Emmett has the key. But why should I lock it?
Because he's still in there.
He?
He hadn't done any harm before, but he's done harm now. There's no telling what might happen if he gets loose.
You mean?
I mean Professor Ann Smith's protege, whoever he is. The man without a body.
Under the red sunset, some quarter of a mile away, a grass-carpeted lane winds between rows of apple trees. The lane is dusky, though lights shine into it from the windows of a large stone house, Dr. Norwood's house beyond the apple trees. Up and down, up and down, a shadowy figure is pacing. An elderly figure, dejected figure, tall and frail as a shadow among shadows, muttering to itself, shaking its head, now and then raising one fist in bewilderment or anguish. Sometimes the light gleams on large spectacles and a kindly mouth. Up and down, endlessly up and down strides Professor Ann Smith.
I'm not guilty. I'm not guilty. How can I convince them that I'm not guilty? Who's there? I saw you dodge behind that tree. Stand out, sir. Did you call me Professor Ann Smith? Yes, I did call you. Who are you? You probably won't recognize me, Professor Ann Smith.
Nevertheless, my friend, may I ask what your name is?
My name is Wellman, Professor George Wellman.
Wellman. I've heard that name.
Maybe you have. I'm a builder by trade, and a great friend of Dr. Norwood's.
Wait one moment. Aren't you the young man whose firm is putting up these air raid shelters along the seawall and making such an unholy din with your riveting machines?
That's me.
And come to think of it, aren't you the one who first started this alarm about
An invisible man.
Yes, because I met him.
You did not meet him, sir. This whole thesis is scientific nonsense, and I won't have it.
You won't have what?
I'm an old man, Mr. Melvin. I never did anybody the least harm. As God is my judge, I know nothing whatever about this. What's that?
It looks like the Vicar's car, Professor. You'd better stand back. This is a pretty narrow lane. Ansmith! Professor Ansmith!
Yes, Mr. Morley, I hear you.
We thought you'd better drive over here straight away. I think you've met my daughter. And of course you know Dr. Norwood.
Yes,
There's no time for any social formalities. Get into your house, Professor Ansmith. Get in quickly and close the shutters.
But why should I do that? Because there's a mob coming, sir, and we can't stop them.
Hurry, do hurry.
A mob coming here? Why?
Haven't you heard the news?
I've heard nothing, my friend. The only person I've seen has been that young man there who chews a toothpick and hides behind the trees.
George Wellman? What on earth are you doing here?
Watching, Janice. Watching and waiting, just as usual.
Listen to me, Professor Ansmith. Henry Emmett, the head verger at St. Luke's, was thrown from the belfry window not 20 minutes ago.
Not by me, sir, I assure you. I had nothing to do with it.
No, not by you, but apparently by the invisible man.
Oh, Father in heaven, will this never stop?
Not till we catch the fellow.
No, be quiet, Mr. Bobbin, please.
I'm sorry, Padre. I take it back.
I myself can testify that no visible person laid hands on Emmett. He was struck as though with a gigantic fist. What's the matter, Professor Ansmith? Is anything wrong?
No. I was just thinking.
How did that kid get over this?
Is it dead?
Fortunately, no.
I'm glad of that, my friend, for a certain person's sake.
He's not even seriously hurt. The bell tower isn't high, and a tree broke the force of his fall. But he's badly shaken up, and that crowd at the Coach and Horses means trouble. If you haven't anything to say to us, if you haven't a word of explanation to utter...
Listen, Padre, don't you hear anything?
Yes, I thought I heard voices.
Can't be that crowd from the village. We're too far ahead of them.
It's a crowd, all right. And they've been here for hours.
But where? I don't see anybody.
Jim, look, behind the trees.
Look behind the trees. Look beyond the hedgerows. Look for any place where a watcher can hide.
And may I ask what they're doing here?
They're watching you, Professor Ansmith.
More of your spies, you mean?
You can call them anything you please. They're getting impatient and they want to show down. If I as much as hold my hand up like this... Don't throw stones at the windows, you fools! You'll only break the doctor's window!
Gentlemen, I can't have any more of this. Be quiet, all of you, and listen to me.
Well, sir, we're listening.
I'm a peaceful man. I like to live in peace with my neighbors. I have nothing to do with this so-called reign of terror. But you don't believe that, do you? No. Then I must expose a fraud. Now, don't blame me if I expose the trickster, too. I have made preparations to show you the invisible man. The man without a body.
Quiet, everybody!
Mr. Morley, I believe you and your daughter walked through this lane last night while I was away at the Bury St. Edmunds.
I don't know about your being away, sir. My daughter and I were certainly here, yes.
Good. Miss Janice Morley,
Yes, Professor Ansmith.
will you look toward your right, please, at the house? What do you see?
It's the same room.
What room?
The room with the little round table and the gramophone.
It's a three-legged table, you notice.
Yes, of course.
But there's nobody in the room.
No, nobody at all.
Are conditions exactly as they were last night?
Yes, except there aren't any gloves on the table.
No, but the invisible man is there.
Oh.
A living presence, ready to act and breathe and even kill. With your permission, I shall now address him. Hello in there. Hello in there. Hello in there.
If anybody answers him, Father, I'm going to scream.
Quiet, Janice, quiet.
Father, look, the gloves are appearing on the table.
I call out to him and I speak as follows. Hold the phonograph with your left glove. That's it. Turn the handle with your right. One turn, 2, 3, 4. That's enough. Touch the spring with your left hand. Push the record. Lower the needle with your right and... Ladies and gentlemen, the Invisible Man. On the contrary, let them do all they like. Aim at the table, my friend. Aim at the table.
Why at the table?
Because then they'll see the trick.
I don't follow you. What trick?
The trick of the looking glasses. There. You see now, my friend?
I think I do.
The legs of the table form a triangle with its point towards you. Panels of looking glass are fitted in the two sides facing you.
What do you know about that?
You think you can see under the table, but what you actually see are the side walls of the room reflected in those two mirrors.
Oh, wait a minute. You mean...
I mean that my old servant, hidden behind the mirrors, has just been working the gloves to a panel in the tabletop. It's a very old trick, first shown by Colonel Stadair at the London Polytechnic.
And that's what happened last night?
Yes.
And you had nothing to do with it?
Nothing whatever, nor had my servant.
Then who did do it and why? What is the explanation of all this?
Well, I can't tell you why. That's what beats me. But I can tell you everything else.
This invisible man who's been scaring us all silly.
My dear young lady, there's no invisible man. There never has been.
I might believe that, Professor Ansmith, if I hadn't seen a church bell ringing where there was no hand to ring it. And poor old Emmett flung out of the tower as though a giant hand had got hold of him. You're not saying that was done with looking glasses?
No, my friend, not at all. That was really clever.
Strings? Wires? Ropes?
No, they weren't necessary.
But the thing's impossible.
Oh, no. The same principle was used by my old friend J.N. Maskelyne to make mechanical figures work. Psycho played whist, and Zoe drew pictures. I myself,
Yeah. Go on, sir. You yourself, what are you going to say?
The secret I was about to say remains unknown even today. You were right, in a way, when you tell us that Emmett acted as though a giant had got hold of him. A giant had got hold of him, at least a gigantic force.
Oh, before we all go completely mad, would you mind telling us what this gigantic force was?
Not at all. It was compressed air.
Compressed air?
But don't you see it even yet, any of you?
No.
A compressed air pipe with 1,000 pounds pressure behind it was run up into the tower facing the bell. It could be operated from the ground outside. The pressure was turned on and off in bursts. It made that heavy bell swing like a toy. Emmett, don't you remember? Emmett rushed forwards towards the bell.
And the air pressure?
The air pressure struck him like a sledgehammer and flung him headlong out of the tower. There's your miracle, gentlemen.
Reported that they were
That's it. That's all we get. Motherfucker.
Letitia James sued the organization last year, pushing to dissolve it for misspending and self-dealing. That's the news on 1G.
Hello, everybody.
Center in Latin America on January 12th identified a new variant of the COVID-19.
Understanding is the goal.
You're listening to a flashback of Roundtable, an in-depth discussion on the hottest topics in China. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Roundtable. Coming to you live from Beijing, I am He Yang, joined by Huang Shen and Lai Ming. Good as always to have you join this ride. We have some fascinating topics for discussion today and every day. On today's program, how has buying stuff changed for Chinese people, especially in 2020? We take a chronologically look on the development of retail in the last 40-odd years. And video gaming is a worldwide multi-billion-dollar industry that has been rapid.
Jim, are these accusations true?
Yes, they are true.
Doubtless he had a good reason, Janice. Doubtless he had a good reason.
Yes, we had a good reason. The very best reason in the world.
You had a good reason for scaring people half to death and trying to kill poor old Henry Emmett?
We didn't mean any harm against Emmett. That was an accident.
But you dare to defend yourself now?
Yes, just that.
Before we go home, Father, shall we apologize to Professor Ann Smith? I hope he'll try to think better of English hospitality.
Good, Janice, good. I hope he will, too.
You hope he will.
Listen, Janice, before you act on any belief, you have to be absolutely sure in your own mind. George and I had to prove something, and now I'm glad to say we have proved it.
Oh, I can't stand this any longer. If you have anything to say, go on and say it straight out. What was it you had to prove?
We had to prove to our own satisfaction that this pretended American who calls himself Professor Ann Smith...
Pretended American?
Who calls himself Professor Ann Smith?
We had to prove that this pretended American was no other than Karl Heinrich von Keist, the celebrated stage magician from the Winter Garden Theater in Berlin.
What?
Whose real job is to find the camouflage aerodrome near Bury St. Edmunds. No. He explained his own tricks very nicely, George. We'll swear out a warrant in the morning.
And so closes The Man Without a Body, starring John Sutton and George Zucco. Tonight's tale of suspense. This is your narrator, the Man in Black, who conveys to you Columbia's invitation to spend this half hour in suspense with us again next Tuesday, when the distinguished actress, Miss Agnes Moorehead, will be heard in one of her many brilliant characterizations. Starring with Miss Moorehead will be Miss Ellen Drew, who is Carol Linden, tells the amazing story of Uncle Henry's Rosebush. The producer of these broadcasts is William Spear, with Ted Bliss, the director, Bernard Herrmann and Lucia Mahowit, conductor and composer, and John Dixon Carr, the author, collaborated on tonight's Suspense.
This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
As the largest retail market in the near future. And if we see the Chinese cities and for some detailed index, and we have seen the retailer index of Shanghai and Beijing were 98 and 87% respectively, and ranking first and the second, so about twice higher than that of Shenzhen, which ranked as the third place. And we have seen some very famous and popular shopping malls in Beijing. We also saw that people are gradually shifting from offline to online shopping more often than ever, and it covers different age groups. And for a very long time, people assumed that online shopping is something that is popular among younger generation, but it seems like more and more elderly folks, they gradually pick up the online shopping habits during the past year. Yeah, it's almost like if you want to do any shopping, and sometimes shopping is not to buy, it is not only just to buy, things we desire, but sometimes it's about necessities. And then that's driven so many older users.
And I think it's interesting that we mentioned two key words, and that is urbanization and online shopping, because we're talking about urbanization rate over 60% in as of the year 2019. So we still got a long way to go in terms of really building big cities across the country. But again, I'm not sure about you guys' experience, but I'm not originally from Beijing. And so I when it comes to shopping, some of the stuff that I look for on rare occasions, I don't know where to go find them. For instance, I recently had a need to buy some nails for some fitting and repair work at home.
Fitting and repairment.
To buy is not only just to buy,
those hardware stores, and
you can't find a
and I could just go for maybe a dozen, and that'll be enough.
Yeah.
But Heyan, you were originally from here, and whether you were having an entirely different experience, looking for something, that you only need on rare occasions.
That's a very, very good question, Liming. The part about where do you get these random stuff that maybe you only needed once or twice in a lifetime, and where do you find these things, right? If you ask me, I do know this very small hardware shop. He's or is it more like a vendor that's affiliated with in one of the underground supermarkets near where I live? So,
Gunsmoke, starring William Conrad.
Lived in this compound for more than, gosh, we just hit 20 years.
Wow. So you do know your neighborhood.
So, yes, and I do know where the 2 recycle bins, they are located, like the back of my hand. So, and alongside the small hardware shop. So, yeah, I think this is a really good window into sort of understanding, like, shopping for people, because there's plenty of stuff we need to buy. And when it comes to some of these necessities, but you just don't need them every day, if I just went online, which is just the simpler and safer option, it seems, during the age of COVID, then I'm wondering if the owner of that little vendor store, or just it's not a store anymore, I think it's just it occupies like a corner affiliated to that underground supermarket, then I wonder if that guy is going to be able to survive 2020.
He's probably selling stuff over the internet as well and making some money out of it.
Yeah, that's a good way to supplement his business, I guess. So, yeah, but I mean, you make a brilliant point. I guess most young people would just go straight to the internet to buy anything they need, especially if they don't know where to find these things in real life.
I don't know the 2-kilometer radius around me like the back of my hand as well as Heyan. So, when it comes to shopping for those stuff, I mean, it's either the shopping malls or convenience stores, but you can find those stuff, hardware, at those locations.
Yeah, one of the most interesting case in my household is that my husband purchased some ladybugs from online shops.
Oh, yeah.
That's really the insect. Yeah, the living creature. Yeah, that's a very rare, case, and which you can see on Taobao or other e-commerce platforms. You can buy everything. The story started. I love the story. It's too good to pass. We purchased a mint plant.
Mint plant.
Yeah, then you can use the mint to do all kinds of dishes and even for bakery, right? But at the same time, during the summertime, it was super humid in Beijing, and then we found there was some little white bugs in our mint plant. After trying all the solutions we found online, we still couldn't kill the little white bugs. And then my husband found another suggestion online, which is you can introduce ladybugs into your household. The ladybugs will eat the little white bugs. And then he was thinking about, oh, where can I find ladybugs? You know, in Beijing, we can't find any wet market or this floral and the birds like a market.
Oh, there is a market at
really,
but it was temporarily shut in 2020.
And then he opened his Taobao page, type in ladybugs, and then he was surprised to see some sellers, they do deliver ladybugs from another part of the country to Beijing, and that's how we got our ladybugs.
Yeah, how creative.
Just fight bug with bug.
Yeah.
Like fight the bad bug with a good bug. So, but the good bug is here to stay. You know,
we throw them away after I spotted them on the wall.
After using them.
Oh, they're still bugs, you know. And that's my point. Like, if we want to buy something that we frequently use in our daily lives, probably we could find it in offline stores near our household. Like, go to the grocery store, department store, or shopping mall around you. But for some stuff like you rarely use it in your daily life, then you don't know where to find them.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously entirely different from our experience as a child, I think. I mean, nowadays you can just go online and shop for those stuff. But I'm not sure about you guys again. When I was a little kid, we did have a small department store in the town, and but my memory about it was always about going there looking for something but not being able to find it. And then this department store is always dimly lighted, if it was lighted at all, and then you could see the dust even without the light. You could see the dust gathering on the commodities there. So I think ours was an example of low, or if not no, demand for commodities being displayed there. But I imagine for those of you living in big cities, is an entirely different experience. Right? There's got to be some department stores that are pretty popular based on some of the readings I've done in recent years. I mean, it seems that at least in Beijing, the Wangfujing Baihu, so department store in Wangfujing Street, is pretty popular back in the days. Was pretty popular back in the days.
Yeah, and I've seen that particular department store get a facelift, try out various things to recreate the popularity it once enjoyed in the 1980s or maybe early 1990s to some extent. But it's a brilliant case point to have in hand to study how retail has changed here in China, because ever since the reform and opening up, we've seen that people, first of all, there's the availability and variety of goods for people to shop, right? And then there's also the improvement of people's livelihoods so that people have the money to shop. And when we take a look at the venues where they get the goods, well, there's definitely the department store. And there's also later on, we saw the rise of shopping malls and also supermarkets. Yeah. And then possibly chained stores. These could possibly be the few anchors we use to demonstrate how retail has changed in China in the 40 years. What was your experience and memory attached to each of these individual venues, which has experienced the rise and fall and possibly rise again for some, but not the others? What do you think about it?
Yeah, for me, even before the show, I asked Lining and Heyang, how can I differentiate department stores from shopping malls? And when I was a child, I remember when we mentioned department store, it referred to this kind of state-owned shops.
SOEs,
it has multiple stories, and you can see each story has been dedicated to a certain type or category of products. And usually the shop assistants, they dress in the uniforms, and they just represent the whole department store. And when we talk about shopping malls, it was more like these foreign brand shopping malls. There, in my city, there's Isan, a Japanese shopping mall, and it has all kinds of, besides selling products and covering all categories, they also have some entertainment facilities like ice rink, and also some, the game section. You can play the arcade games, and also there are food court. Sometimes they have movie theaters. So nowadays we are more familiar with the concept of shopping malls because they're everywhere in the city, and we can enjoy not only do the shopping function, but we can also satisfy our socialize and also the entertainment function just in that one particular brick and mortar building.
Quick question here, because we've seen also department stores just not doing that well in China, nor in many places around the world, like Macy's, the iconic department store in New York. Did it declare bankruptcy or was in some serious financial trouble in 2020? As one case point in the U.S., what do you think explains sort of this dwindling interest in visiting a department store versus, shopping malls or some of the other places?
That is a very, very great question. I haven't really thought about it, but I think one of the reasons is, the improvement in transportation. There was one city near the river of Mississippi in the U.S. that I paid a visit to, and it was such a small city that some of the department stores or shopping centers, they were all empty. And I talked to the locals, and they said that they've all moved on. They were all closed off because people are no longer shopping there. They're driving somewhere else to a bigger city nearby to do the shopping. It was probably Ohio, probably. And so I think the same trend is happening in China as well. In my township, I think I covered the part about department stores, how it was not exactly very much needed back in the days. And I think it was in my high school years, so the beginning of 2000, that we saw our very first supermarkets. And I think we stopped at that. I haven't been there for a couple of years, but I'm not sure whether we have a shopping mall already. I don't think so. There are big movie theaters, but I don't think they're quite up to the standard of a shopping mall. So I don't think people hang out there. And so I think nowadays, even people who have a demand for, let's say, boutique stores, shopping experience at those boutique stores, they would travel. They would drive to a nearby city, which is bigger. I imagine there might be shopping centers. So I think we are at a point in history where urbanization is really creating this weird momentum in retail. On the one hand, urbanization is taking place. People are really moving from villages, rural areas in the mountains, to city centers, town centers. But on the other hand, transportation has become so easy that they don't really see a point in staying there. People here in China, we say 人往高处走. So people have an aspiration to try and move to better places. And when it's being made easier for them to travel to a different city to do the shopping, why would they sit and be content with whatever they have that they don't necessarily need?
Very interesting. And again, let me bring in supermarkets. And I still remember when the first Carrefour was opened in Beijing, and that was in the later part of the 1990s. It created traffic jams around the complex because it was this brand new retail or way to do business that people never saw before for us Beijingers back in the time. Because with supermarkets, the whole concept is you've got shelves and shelves of goods, right? And then you pick and choose yourself. You don't need to ask anybody for permission to take the stuff off the shelf. You go do that yourself. You compare, you play around, you decide what you want to get, and then you pay at the checkout counter. And that was just
not something people used to do. Remember in the age of department stores, you would ask the lady. Usually it's the lady. Not to be sexist here.
And need to be nicely.
Yeah, and it's like, could you please, bring me that thing off that second shelf and I can have a look, please? And sometimes they're not so nice to you. Sometimes the person can have a attitude, sometimes not. But you had to go through that person to get to the goods. But with the supermarket, it's all you. And then I remember the first time when I visited a supermarket, it was some sort of just sense of abundance and just so many goods. And just think of China in the 1980s even. So that was just not something people enjoyed. But now, supermarkets, nah. Just anything, just like any other shopping place for people, the idea has no novelty anymore.
Yeah, and I think we do have different experiences. Like when I was growing up in a small town, we didn't used to have supermarkets. In the place of supermarkets, we used to have this 小工艺品市场, so this this market for small handicrafts, I suppose. And so you go there to buy stuff, buy clothing or toy guns, so tiny little stuff. And so it was just a street, and every business owner would have a storefront, and they just sit there and play loud music, and that was it. We didn't have a supermarket until, like I said earlier, the early 2000s. So it was a entirely different experience. And then coming to first of all to Shanghai to study and being in the supermarket for real for the first time, and I was dazzled. I was dazzled by the amount of people there and the amount of commodities there. I mean, there was this sense of visual overload. I mean, something was crying at the back of my mind saying, overheat, just an overload, I couldn't handle that information.
My first impression of a supermarket was it was so convenient, because back then my grandparents, they went to wet markets to purchase daily groceries, and they have to compare the prices of each small vendors and then make the most cost-effective decision. But with a supermarket, they gather all the products under the same category together. You don't need to compare the price. Just buy the products and the checkout, and it can save you time and energy. But nowadays we have seen, even in this category, it has been greatly challenged by online shopping. So now I feel like brick and mortar stores, they have to fulfill the function of, so it's just like your daily, like a social life, and you have to be more creative instead of just enable people to shop in your department store or the shopping mall. You have to create better user experience for them. Like you have to turn yourself into an art gallery, exhibition center, and just introduce some fancy restaurants or cafes to give people a time to hang out with their friends and spend an afternoon or the whole day there. That's the new function of shopping mall.
Just add one more factor, and also just create facilities that's targeting parents. So basically, you need facilities where the kids could play and make sure it's safe and clean. Because if these days the trick is if you get the kid into the venue, you get the parents and possibly the grandparents, and that's where business magic could happen for retail. And why are we talking about retail? Why is it so important to our economy?
Well, I think it's related to how we get our stuff. I mean, 柴米油盐酱醋茶, we tend to talk about it. And so the first thing that people begin to think about early in the morning is the wood, oil, so food stuff, and then the salt, that sort of thing. So there's got to be a place where you can get all those stuff. If you can't, I mean, then we might have a problem.
And also, this is about domestic consumption, which is one area that China is trying to improve, I suppose, as we move further away from being the world's factory, but, for a huge market where people can buy stuff domestically. And that's one of the big drivers of
2020 and also the future of our economy. You are listening to Roundtable. Coming up next, we're going to talk about video games.
Oh, video games.
Yes, Liming used to be a gamer. He's still a gamer. An amateur gamer now, I suppose. We'll be back after this break for more discussion. Stay tuned.
Looking for passion? How about fiery debate? Want to hear about current events in China from different perspectives? Then tune in to Roundtable.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Roundtable. Coming to you live from Beijing.
Roundtable.
Roundtable.
Connecting China and the world.
We bring you fun and timely discussions about what's affecting our lives everywhere, every day. Tune in to Roundtable, where the East meets the West, and understanding is the goal. Do you keep current with what's going on in China and the world? Think you'd like to share your opinions on the air? If all your answers are yes, things are about to get real. Roundtable. Beijing's top international talk show is looking for new voices. We need native English speakers in China with media experience. If this sounds like a good fit, send us your CV and cover letter to ezfmroundtable@foxmail.com.
New text message received.
Roundtable. We want you.
You're listening to a flashback of Roundtable, an in-depth discussion on the hottest topics in China. You're listening to Roundtable with myself, He Yang, joined by Liming and Huang Shen. Coming up, video gaming is a worldwide billion-dollar industry, and it's been in rapid growth mode. So we'll talk about what are the best games of 2020, what the future holds for the multi-billion-dollar video game industry.
Damn.
And experts say video call.
Oh, well, I guess we just missed that.
You found Luther, did you?
He's dead.
You found him dead?
A video call.
He had it coming a long time.
To the authorities.
Foxmail.com.
New text message received.
Roundtable. We want you.
Staring at us this again. Oh, let's watch the arrow go wherever it wants.
You're listening to Roundtable with myself, He Yang, joined by Liming and Huang Shen. Coming up, video gaming is a worldwide billion